The infamous Golden State Killer evaded law enforcement authorities for an astonishing 40 years before his arrest in 2018. Contrary to the image of a notorious criminal, D'Angelo was a seemingly ordinary former police officer residing near Sacramento. He concealed his true identity in plain sight for more than 4 decades. Despite his serious demeanor and infrequent smile, former co-workers described him as a regular Joe. However, in a dramatic turn of events, Joseph James D'Angelo was charged with the heinous crimes of the Golden State Killer in 2018. The Golden State Killer's reign of terror spanned across California, committing at least 51 rapes and 13 murders during the 1970s and 1980s. On June 29, 2020, Joseph D'Angelo made a shocking confession, pleading guilty to 26 charges related to a series of rapes and murders. He was ultimately charged with 13 counts of murder, along with additional special circumstances, as well as 13 counts of kidnapping for robbery. Despite the statute of limitations for many of the rapes he's accused of having expired, he was sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences for the crimes he admitted to, plus an additional life sentence and 8 more years, ensuring his eventual death in prison. The Golden State Killer, who initially targeted Northern California as the East Area rapist, before moving south and becoming a notorious murderer known as the original Night Stalker, was one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. So, how could Joseph James D'Angelo, a retired and elderly family man who once served as a police officer, have concealed such a heinous secret? Joseph James D'Angelo was born on November 8, 1945, in Bath, New York. However, he spent most of his early life in the suburbs of Sacramento, where he attended Folsom High School after his mother, a Denny's waitress, married a traveling welder. She moved with him to Auburn. During the Vietnam War, D'Angelo served in the Navy for approximately 22 months. Upon his return home, he was honored as a decorated veteran, having earned several medals, including the National Defense Service Medal, the Vietnam Service Medal, and the Vietnam Campaign Medal. D'Angelo pursued higher education by attending Sierra College from 1968 to 1970. Subsequently, he enrolled at California State University, Sacramento in 1971, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice in 1972. A neighbor described D'Angelo as a pleasant and clean-cut young man, but he lost part of a finger during a war. In 1973, Joseph D'Angelo married Sharon Marie Huddle. Around the same time, he allegedly began either an internship or volunteer work with the Roseville Police Department, although the department reportedly found no records of his employment there. However, Joseph D'Angelo did indeed work as a police officer in Exeter from 1973 to 1976, and then he worked for the Auburn Police Department from 1976 to 1979. He was dismissed from the latter job after being charged with stealing a hammer and dog repellent from a drugstore in Citrus Heights. Before he was caught shoplifting, the Golden State Killer appeared to be an upright individual. The Exeter Sun 1973 profile of D'Angelo portrayed him as such. D'Angelo believes that without law and order, there can be no government, and without a democratic government, there can be no freedom. Law enforcement is his career, and his job is to serve the community. Unfortunately, his background in criminal justice, his knowledge of police investigation procedures, and his experience in Vietnam may have only enhanced Joseph D'Angelo's skills as a serial killer. The horrifying crimes of the Golden State Killer. The Vizsla ransacker crimes commenced in 1974, approximately a year after Joseph James D'Angelo joined the force in nearby Exeter. The unidentified criminal operated until 1975 and is estimated to have burglarized at least 100 homes. Typically, small items were stolen, while high-value objects were often left behind. The crime spree frequently involved women's underwear being scattered around the homes, while the Vizsla ransacker was primarily known for his burglaries. It's believed that he may have also been responsible for a murder during the same period. By 1976, the East Area Rapist, another name given to the Golden State Killer, was terrorizing the Sacramento area. These attacks often occurred in single-story homes inhabited by single women near practical escape routes. The masked man would often break in beforehand, having stalked his victims to memorize their routines. He would then leave ligatures behind for binding them later. He would also unload any guns he found and unlock sliding glass doors or windows. Eventually, he would advance to attacking couples. He was almost caught once, but he fled on a bicycle, a preferred escape tactic of his. The attacks in that area appeared to end by 1979. At the time, the Vizsla ransacker and East Area Rapist, both monikers created by the press, were thought to be different individuals. The police, too, saw no significant connections between the various aliases later known to all apply to the Golden State Killer. Unfortunately, they would all be similarly confused by the appearance of the original Night Stalker, the nickname given to a seemingly new killer in Southern California in 1979. These incidents mirrored the East Area Rapist attacks in some ways, but they ended in the bludgeoning or shooting of the victims. At least 10 people were killed at the hands of the original Night Stalker. It wasn't immediately evident that the three criminals could be the same person, all the work of the notorious Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo. However, at several of these crime scenes, ligature and similarly sized shoe prints were discovered. Additionally, threatening phone calls were made to both the victims and the police. Unfortunately, DNA evidence was not yet standardized and understood at the time. 3 years after the last murder committed by the original Night Stalker, Joseph D'Angelo began working as a truck mechanic at a Roseville distribution center for Save Mart groceries. His 27-year career there concluded with his retirement in 2017, just a year after the FBI intensified its efforts to apprehend the man now known as the Golden State Killer. D'Angelo had resided in Citrus Heights since 1983. His neighbor, Corey Harvey, confirmed that he was living with a daughter and granddaughter. Harvey was shocked by the arrest, as she had simply known D'Angelo as Joe, the elderly man who mentioned that retirement was an excellent opportunity for fishing. Harvey also described Joe as an avid cyclist and a normal man, except for that quirkiness of getting mad. However, other neighbors observed a different side of him compared to the pleasant Grandpa Harvey portrayed. Natalia, who lived a few doors down, recalled that they used to affectionately refer to him as Freak. She mentioned that Joe would have temper tantrums, not at anyone in particular, but rather expressing his self-frustration. Perhaps the most chilling revelation came from neighbor Eddie Verdon, who recounted his encounter with Joseph D'Angelo prowling on his property. "I had a nagging feeling about this guy for quite some time," he confessed. Larry Crompton, a retired detective from the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department, shared his perspective. Over the years, we heard about homicides in Southern California, and we initially suspected it was the East Area rapist. However, Crompton explained that the East Area rapist's inability to leave fingerprints posed a challenge. We couldn't definitely prove that he was the same person. Aside from modus operandi, or MO, back then we didn't know about DNA testing. It wasn't until 2001 that DNA tests confirmed the link between the East Area rapist and the original Night Stalker. Before that, all the police had were various sketches of the perpetrator based on survivors' descriptions. Over the decades, several potential Golden State Killer suspects emerged, but unfortunately, most of them turned out to be dead ends. Some had died in the 80s before the final crimes were committed, while others were cleared by DNA evidence in the 1990s. With the advent of genealogy services that combined vast DNA databases, authorities were able to significantly narrow their search by 2018. Utilizing GEDmatch, police analyzed DNA samples obtained from the decades-old crime scenes to create a profile of the perpetrator. In April of that year, Joseph DeAngelo's name emerged as one of the results. When detectives collected some of the DNA from the door handle of his car, they discovered a remarkable match with the DNA evidence left behind in the 1970s and 1980s. Michelle McNamara, the author of the book I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which has since been adapted into an HBO documentary, predicted that DNA evidence would finally capture the Golden State Killer. Her prediction proved to be accurate. After his arrest, Sacramento District Attorney Marie Sherbert expressed her satisfaction, stating, "We found the needle in the haystack, and it was right here in Sacramento." Joseph James DeAngelo's legal journey began in April 2018 when he was arrested. Despite the crimes occurring in 6 counties, Sacramento, Santa Barbara, Orange Ventura, Tulare, and Contra Costa, DeAngelo was tried on multiple counts of murder in a single trial. During the pre-trial hearing, Judge White allowed the DNA evidence and approved the prosecution's request for additional cheek swabs from DeAngelo. In January, the court entered a not guilty plea on DeAngelo's behalf and denied the defense's request for more time to gather evidence before the trial commenced. Although the COVID-19 pandemic delayed the May 12th preliminary hearing, the Golden State Killer trial finally proceeded in June. In June, DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 13 counts of murder and 13 counts of kidnapping. Finally, in August, Joseph James DeAngelo received multiple life sentences. In the days leading up to his sentencing, several of his victims and others who knew him addressed the court, some breaking the silence they had maintained for decades. One woman, who was bound by DeAngelo at the age of 7 while he raped her mother, described him as proof monsters were real. I had met the boogeyman. The sister of another victim simply stated, "May he rot in hell." If nothing else, Joseph DeAngelo's life sentences ensure that the Golden State Killer will never be released from prison. If you like this episode from Midnight Society, the Bradford Chronicles, please smash the like button, subscribe, and until next time, we'll see you again.